Is Season 5 worth playing? Well shit, it depends. In this video, I'll go through everything we know about Season 5 so far and analyze that shit so you know exactly what's coming, and you can decide for yourself if you want to play it. But in case you're just looking for a quick TLDR, let me give you an overview. So did you enjoy Season 4? If the answer is yes, and you're not burnt out yet, then fuck yes, you should play Season 5. I recently made a video bashing the living shit out of the Season 5 PTR. Fortunately though, a German reacted to it as well as a bunch more people having the same view, and it was followed by Blizz cleaning up the massive turd I left at their front door. If you've played the seasons before that, and wondering if it's a good time to come back, then hell yes. Season 4 was goated as fuck, and it's basically the same, but better. If you did not enjoy Season 4, however, then you're most likely not going to enjoy the new season either, seeing as it's going to be basically the same, just with item changes. But if you have any enjoyment left in D4, then this is going to be an awesome season to play. Let's see why. First off, we have the Infernal Hordes coming. If you didn't play the PTR, then you basically get these compasses doing random shit in the game, and you can upgrade them unless you're a shit newbie using these scrolls. Either way, you open up the Infernal Horde event via the compasses, and then you're stuck in here for a few minutes killing stuff. Personally, I hated it, but I'll give it another chance now that they've made massive improvements to it, such as increasing density and lowering timers. Next up are a buttload of class and item changes. I'm not going to go through everything, merely the important stuff. As you're not Fortnite players, I expect you can read for yourselves. So, the new uniques. If you've seen these before, then the important ones got hard nerfed. Let's check them out. First is the Crown of Lucion. This helmet was just too hecking good on the PTR, so Blizz hard nerfed it. It's also annoying to play with, seeing as you need to solve resources, and that's boring as fuck. Either way, 75% damage bonus still makes it the best helm in the game, for Big Dam with Shaco being the second option for defense and more cooldown reduction. Endurant Faith is still shit, but Shard of Varathiel certainly is not. Nerfed from 300 basic skill damage down to 200, it's still the best item in the game for any basic skill build. This pretty much in itself is reviving the nerfed Bash build, Heartseeker, and will boost our bonus Splinter build to the fucking moon. Rekonoth's Wake is pretty shit, except for a few niche circumstances. For Lokran's Talisman, this was absolutely broken on the PTR and was going to be used in pretty much every build. And now, it's absolutely shit instead. You can probably gain a maximum of 40% crit chance and 20% crit damage from this, maybe 40, and that's competing with an aspect and important passives. So yeah, throw it in the trash. Next we have Wild Bolt, which is an interesting aspect. This was insanely trash on the PTR, as it only pulled in one enemy at once. If it's fixed, then it will be godly for a bunch of builds. Boulder, for example, which has spinning ball sacks around it. Scrolling down a bit, we have Creeping Death. This is a great aspect, and I'll be slapping it onto my Andariel's Visage build. When it comes to the barbs, Unbroken Chain is pure trash, so just salvage that shit. The third blade is pretty great though. If you slap this one, you can spam Deathblow on 0 cooldown, and that's an A-tier build right there that never existed before. The anger management aspect is also great and sorts out berserking for a buttload of builds such as Whirlwind. Definitely go looking for this one. When it comes to the druids, the Basilisk is unfortunately shit, as it's competing with the most important item slot. The new ring, however, is not shit. Previously it was competing with the glove item slot, but it's now quite godly and will make Cataclysm an actual useful skill. Moonrage can be used for Companion Druids, along with Spirit Bond. And in case you're wondering if Companion Druid is finally viable, it's alright. For the Cringelords, we'll scroll down to the new boots. Path of Trag'Oul. We want to slap this onto our Bone Spirit build as maximum essence increases its damage. It's really goddamn good. The Great Feast is also an alright aspect and could be used in most minion builds along with our Boner Splinter build. Or rather, builds that doesn't require essence. Next up is the Rogue. The Umbercrux sword was way too strong on the PTR, and it has since been hard nerfed. From 30% damage spread and 2 totems to 20 and 1 totem, it's kind of meh. It's still going to be viable for builds that struggle with AoE, however, such as the new Heartseeker build, for example, seeing as Victimize is deleted from the game, or well, nerfed. We then have this new chest, Shroud of Khanduras. This is a great piece, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that it pulls in enemies. This will make it great for a buttload of builds that struggle a bit with the AoE as well, such as Andariel's Visage, for example. Rogues also got 2 god-tier aspects, first one being this one, of True Sight. This is a great fucking aspect for nuking bosses as an example. You can use this with Heartseeker 4 and you'll blow up bosses with ease. Hitting inner sight targets is a bit annoying though, but a fun playstyle. Cold Clip is also godly and more or less saved Heartseeker. And why is that? Well shit, for starters you're always going to freeze enemies, allowing you to benefit from Fidget Finesse. On top of that, you're getting 20% big dam from the imbuement itself and another 30 or so from the Paragons. Without this, Heartseeker would most likely have been a dead build. For the masochistic sorcerers, the Axial Conduit was dog on the PTR, but could be decent. More on that later. Vox Omnium is shit as it's competing with weapons, and the aspects are pretty dog as well. Winter Touch could become a good speed-running aspect for frost builds though, blowing shit up as you're freezing them. Alright, that's the new aspects and uniques. Down here we have this change being massively important. You're now going to receive full materials when you're playing the pit in a group. Previously, only the one that opened it got full materials, and the rest got half or whatever. This alone makes the game twice as enjoyable. Just join the Paragaming Discord, and we'll blast some pits together in Season 5. Next up are a buttload of additional class changes. Scrolling down to the Sorcerer, the new unique pants was absolute dog on the PTR. Fortunately though, that was apparently a bug. This could be of interest, seeing as those would have been an instant salvage previously. In the general changes, we have this new temper. A lovely change for all the barbs that have been tempering items on a rogue, huh? Well, unfortunately, the Gushing Wounds key passive was the reason for needing this, and it seems to be completely dead now. But better late than never. It's also going to be important for the sorcerers, but more on that later. This is the new ring I was talking about that was previously on the gloves. This should make Cataclysm much more viable as a skill in general. This is also due to the new ultimate temper, where you can lower your ultimate cooldown. Combine this with increased Cataclysm duration, and you now have a proper skill. For the Necros, the new unique boots are going to be rather godly for Bone Spirit. Funnily enough though, Bone Spirit was already a godly build. And then they got this, as well as a fuck bunch of buffs, which we'll see soon. And yes, even more buffs after the PTR where they were blowing shit up. We also got the Imprisoned Spirits aspect, buffing Bone Spirit ever further. The build will be one of the absolute best builds in Season 5. That's just a fact. In case you've seen the Bone Splinter build, then this could potentially be used in that one as well. We'll try it out. I'm not sure if someone at Blizz fucked up here, but I have no idea what minion damage reduction is doing on this temper. All the other ones are about fortifying, and this one is just an instant brick. Someone tell them to remove it. Next up are the rogue changes. The new unique for them is Shroud of Khanduras, and we talked about this previously, both pulling in enemies and granting immunity. This one is absolutely fucking bonkers, just saying. Another important rogue change you need to know about is that Flurry is massively buffed and is now an actual skill. So if you're looking for a melee rogue build in Season 5, Go Flurry. Yet another massive change to Flurry that came after the PTR is this one. Not the temper in itself, but give me a sec. So this temper right here grants just massive amounts of additive damage. Slap it on everywhere, and it grants thousands upon thousands. Now, if you've played Rogue before, you're probably like, hey man, we play in close quarters though, so I need to temper crowd control damage. Are you dumb, Mr. Paragaming? Yeah, well, further down is 50% extra damage to the Momentum Key passive. So stay tuned for that. The Rogue Peristance temper is also godly, granting a bunch of health. As it looks, Rogue will be the new Barb in Season 5 when it comes to defensives. Scrolling down a bit, the new pants for Sorc was dogshit, so we'll see what happens after the bug fix. Down here, we can also find a change to the Lightning Rod aspect. This is a pretty good change for Chain Lightning, as it's basically a 40% damage aspect on bosses where it's needed. But nothing game-changing. We then have a bunch of boring changes and end up here in the Discharge temper. Arc Lash will be quite strong in Season 5, and it's mainly due to this temper basically doubling its damage. Definitely a needed change. The same goes for Hydra and Lightning Spear. They will be viable builds now. Some more shit. More shit. This is mainly just useless shit. Read it on your own time. Either it's just small buffs or small nerfs. Now we get to insanely important stuff for the Barbs. The key passives. Unconstrained is getting nerfed from 1.75 to 1.35. This nerf is rough, nerfing 90% of Barb builds. The nerf to Unbridled Rage was extremely rough though, and the one to Walking Arsenal was just pure brain dead, seeing as there is not a single weapon swapping build in the game. Now if you're new to D4, let me give you a history lesson in why these changes are fucking brain dead and why Blizz has to stop doing this. So in previous seasons, Overpower was completely broken, and Barbs can use Overpower, where Hotter was the best build in the game. The obvious thing is to nerf Overpower, which they did. But at the same time, they completely gutted Hotter as a skill. Now though, they did it the other way around. Thorns, Bash and Flay has been top builds in Season 4. So they gut them, which is fine, and Barb is no longer broken, but after that, every Barb build in the game is halved on top of that. Why? You may ask. I don't know, Mao, you tell me. Either way, Gushing Wounds looks to be completely useless as well. The wording used here is a bit strange though, and I don't know exactly what it means. Previously, this passive was calculated roughly like this, and is why Bleed was broken. Now it's like this, and I left the last part blank, as it looks to just be an additive bonus now, but it could be multiplicative, I don't hecking know. I'll test it as soon Season 5 drops. If it's additive, then all Bleed builds are dead, as we're losing a 30x multiplier or whatever. Alright, and then we scroll through some useless changes. The Hemorrhage Legendary Node was also capped at 45%, nerfing bleeding further. We also find a great buff to the Executioner here, and a lot of builds will most likely prefer polearms due to this if we're not running the Granddaddy Uber. These two tempering nerfs are quite massive. A lot of you probably wonder what the hell is going to happen to Bash in Season 5. Now Bash Bleed is most likely dead, but regular Bash will remain a great build despite this nerf. This is mainly due to it being insanely strong as base, and us getting new items such as Shard of Varathiel. I'll definitely blast some Bash in the new season. The Protection Manual is also an absolutely massive nerf. Previously, we could use this to temper imposing presence everywhere and get hundreds of thousands of life. Well, this is gone now, and we shall suffer. Oh, and Thorns is completely dead as a result, as well combined with a few more nerfs. Next up are these kinds of buffs, which is a buff to every class that is not a Barb, as they will remain the same due to them having more weapons. The Rogues will in turn get an increase per 9 core skill. It's a cool change, and will be important in Vessel of Hatred. In this season, though, it's mainly just a kick in the nuts for the barbs that are already dead, but cool regardless. Here for the Druid, there are two changes you need to know about, as Druid will have some of the best builds, where the best one will be Landslide. As a reference, Landslide Druids could clear roughly 135s in Season 4, and this is a quadrupling of their damage. On top of that, Landslide is getting an additional buff now after the PTR in the unique changes. The same goes for Boulder. They're getting two massive buffs, this being one of them. We then have a bunch of useless trash until we get to Earthen Bulwark, previously being based on base life and now on max life. This is a massive buff for every build utilizing Bulwark. Let's scroll down and take a look at a Druid nerf you need to know about. Previously, a bunch of Druid builds were using Shepherds to boost their damage. This aspect is now dead for any build that isn't a pure companion build though, just letting you know. The Retaliation aspect is getting buffed though, for 15% extra big dam, or 31 a two-hander. This is a lovely buff for Pulverize, for example. Let's get scrolling again to the Thunderstruck node. In Season 4, this node was uncapped. It now has a 60% maximum, which is basically half of what you could gain for your Storm builds previously. So still a massive nerf. Alright, let's get to the Cringelord. There's not a whole lot of interesting changes for the Necro until we get down to the Blighted aspect. This will be important for your minion builds, seeing as every single one was running this aspect. So in case you're logging into your old Necro and wonder why your damage has been halved, this is why. Interestingly enough though, without this aspect we don't have any useful key passive to use anymore. Hopefully they'll sort that shit out before the expansion. Alright, let's get scrolling because there are a lot of small nerfs and buffs here that we don't care about. When we get to the Paragons though, there are two absolutely massive changes. First one being that the Wither legendary node is capped, more or less killing any shadow damage over time build by itself. The other one being a buff to the Bloodbath legendary node. This was funnily enough intended for the blood builds. But you know what other build utilizes overpower? Hell yeah, Bone Spirit. Another buff? Hell yes, I'll take that. Expect Bone Spirit to hit for billions. Alright, a lot of useless trash again all the way down to enhanced Shadow Step. Some massive changes are coming to the rogue skill tree in Season 5. Blizz actually had the balls to change the skill tree before the expansion. Now that's what we like to see. First off is 20% damage reduction after Shadow Stepping. Rogues were already unkillable gods, and now we're even more unkillable. Guess what class I'm starting as in Season 5 LMAO? Dash is also getting a slight buff, now generating crit chance. Wait, what? Isn't 15% crit damage more valuable? Well, sort of, but you also needed to hit shit with dash, and that was annoying as hell. Let's scroll down to Flurry now. What you need to know about Flurry is that it's just flat-out Giga buffed in every way. You may notice in the patch notes, though, that Enhanced and Advanced Flurry got nerfed after the PTR, but the damage was moved to the skill itself instead, so we're Gucci. And if you're not interested in playing Flurry as a build, then you may be interested in getting the dash from Improved Flurry. This is godly for Andariel's Visage builds, allowing for permanent mobility. Rogues are also being massively buffed when it comes to Dark Shroud. This is a bit strange though, and my guess is that Blizz is not entirely sure as to how we're generating Dark Shroud, and maybe the same goes for you. So here's how we do it. By using the Umbrous aspect, we have permanent Dark Shrouds. This also means that no one actually has Dark Shroud on their bars. So I have two theories. Either Blizz is unaware of how broken the Umbrous aspect is and mainly looks at skill usage data, or they're setting us up for the expansion. Either way, I'm not complaining. Another buff that may not look significant is to that of Smoke Grenade, but this change is actually huge, as we were not able to inflict the Smoke Grenade debuff onto bosses previously, making Smoke Grenade useless on them. But that's no longer the case, and Smoke Grenade is now godly. Alright, scrolling time. A bunch of you have probably played a bit of Penetrating Shot this season. In those builds we were abusing Victimize though, and that passive is basically dead. So to be honest, I'm not entirely sure as to what will happen to Penetrating Shot. We'll have to try it out with Precision instead. If you've tried it already, let me know. Scrolling down the passives, we find a buff that is just massive yet again. Concussive was previously useless, but now you're granted 18% damage when you chug a potion, meaning a huge buff for every rogue build in the game. The same goes for Trick Attacks. This is a great passive now, but it was bugged on the PTR, allowing you to get these ranks on your gear. So if you see someone showing PTR footage and hitting for 20 billion or whatever, it may be due to that LOL. Alright. We then have some minor buffs, and a massive one in Alchemical Advantage. This is now a great passive for Andariel's Visage builds, and I expect that build to be a top 5 build in Season 5. Another funny buff is to Second Wind. We can now generate Barrier as rogues for any energy-spending build. I quite like that Blizz is making to the skill tree in the middle of the season, but rogues may become just slightly too strong this season, Amau. We then end up in the key passives. First off, Victimize is dead. The bug fixes is to those of double-dipping mechanics. How big is that nerf then, you may ask? Well, shit. It was completely obliterated in the PTR, so yeah. CYA. The change to Momentum, however, is a great change. This was the shittiest of the key passives in my opinion, but it's now actually great as it can generate 50% extra damage. Combine this with the temper that increases your damage, the more Dark Shroud stacks you have along with Aspect of Stolen Vigor, which is by the way getting buffed as well, and you have yourself a build. I'll use this for Flurry, and it will be great for leveling as well. We're also getting a buttload of buffs to Arrow Storms this season, but this is nothing that I'll cover, as I still believe it will be shit. Feel free to prove me wrong? Alright, let's get scrolling to some more amazing buffs. Wait, what? More buffs? Hell yeah! First off, the changes to Wind Force and Scoundrel's Kiss is going to make Barrage and Rapid Fire god tier. We then find a buff here to Tricks of the Trade and Cheap Shot that are completely bonkers. First off, the Tricks of the Trade node was extremely conditional previously. Now though, you'll be able to keep this up just by dashing for the ranged builds. It's basically a flat 25% buff to every rogue build expect for Andariel's. The same goes for Cheap Shot, as it's now usable on bosses, meaning we get a flat 25% damage bonus on every boss. Pretty great. We also have the Exploit Weakness node. This was bugged on the PTR and one-shot everything. So naturally, Blizz fixed it. By removing it, that is, and it's now a new node. It's a pretty solid buff from Season 4, though, increasing damage to all enemies and not just one. Goddamn. That was a lot of buffs to a class that was next to best already. Let's check out the class that was absolute shit and see what happened to that one. We'll see buffs pretty much across the board here, some minor and some non-useless. A pretty huge buff is to that of Arc Lash. As I said earlier, we got double the Arc Lashes from Tempering now, but also a pretty huge buff from Flickering Arc Lash. Overall, this build is looking really solid, especially combined with Shard of Varathiel. Alright, let's go on the hunt for some substantial changes. First we have is to that of Flame Shield. Blizz is changing all invulnerability skills to start their cooldown after it has ended. And what does this mean? Well, Immortal Sorcerer build is dead. Pun intended. We also have a massive buff to Lightning Spear this season, making it an actual viable build, along with buffing pretty much every build using this for Conjuration Mastery. On top of that, Blizzard buffed Blizzard. Why this isn't already the best build in the game for marketing purpose, I have no clue. Either way, this build was roughly low A tier in Season 4, and it's getting some additional buffs. Let's scroll down a bit to Frozen Orb. This was probably the second best sorcerer build in Season 4, and holy shit, is it getting buffed. Expect a build guide on this one because it's actually looking extremely strong. Spoiler, the Frozen Orb unique also got buffed. It's then scrolling time down to the key passives because those are quite substantial. First off, I told Blizz to triple combustion, and hey, it actually happened. Rejoice, sorcerers. Vire's Mastery also got completely reworked. Unfortunately though, on average, it's completely shit. And for final key passive change is to that of Shatter. Shatter Sorcerer was the best build in Diablo 4 by far, utilizing double, triple, quadruple dipping, which is coincidentally the name of my sex tape El Mao, but that is now supposedly gone. Overall, I don't see Sorcerer having the best builds in the game, but they'll have a buttload of solid A-tier builds. Alright, let's get scrolling again down to some more lightning spears, because you're probably confused to shit as why this spell should even be decent. And it's all due to this new aspect, the splintering energy. I don't know what the hell they've written here, but it's not the same as it was on the PTR, but what you need to know is that lightning spear damage now scales infinitely with crit damage. And as you can now temper crit damage on your gear with the new tempering manuals, this build is looking solid as hell. Let's get scrolling down to the snow-veiled aspect. This is a pretty strong aspect, especially early game. Can recommend while leveling up. You also need to know about the cap to Burning Instinct. This in itself gutted any burning damage build hard, but the cap doubles after the PTR, meaning they're still pretty damn viable. Expect Firebolt to be a strong build, for example, especially with the new uniques. We're also getting a substantial buff to the Lightning Spear build yet again, seeing as it's getting a 30% big damn bonus from the increased cap. The same goes for the increased caps to Frigid Fate and Searing Heat. These buffs are actually huge, and is exactly what I've been ranting about in my previous videos. Great changes. For the tempering recipes, you don't really need to give a shit other than that they're moving the useless tempers to other places to allow for less bricking. Pretty nice. You also get additional tempers on items with greater affixes. Combine this with uniques being non-useless, and you will get much less tempering bricks. Overall, a great change. For the Uber boss changes, you can basically just expect more loot, you'll spend less materials, and you can also summon bosses again instantly after blowing them up. When it comes to the Hell Tides, what you need to know is the changes to the Profane Mind Cages. These things, yeah, they're stackable. And that's fucking awesome, resulting in more loot, more experience, and less boredom. After that, it's yet another scrolling session until we get down here to the crowd control changes. Getting chain crowd controlled is gone forever, and thank God for that. Quite possibly the worst mechanic in the entire game, and it only took them 5 seasons to remove it. You can also use potions as you're crowd controlled. If you're a Giga Chad such as myself, you may remember the bald guy in a hoodie dying trying to spam that potion button on hardcore. While it was hilarious, this is indeed a welcome change. Alright, and then we have some weapon changes here. Blizz is changing what weapons you can equip and what inherent stats they have. You'll notice this when you're in-game, read on your spare time dummies. Oh, and Angel Breath is gone. Fuck yes. Now though, we have some absolutely bonkers changes. First off, we have the changes to leveling. You're now incentivized to kill enemies higher level than you as you're leveling up. This is a massive buff to leveling that is just straight up fun. Previously, you just killed enemies a few levels higher to get the max bonus and one-shot everything. This changes that, and I'm all for it, baby. Next up is changes to bosses. These changes are absolutely massive as well. Bosses are being hard gutted, and I'm all for it as well. Standing still and punching a boss to death for half a lifetime is boring as fuck. So Blizz quadrupled their health downwards LOL. On top of that, the pit boss damage is nerfed. Now in my objective and highly mature Season 5 feedback, I said that if they keep this stacking debuff in the pit, then I'm not pushing the pit ever again. But they fixed that shit, maxing out at 3 stacks, which is the same as in Season 4, and now we're good again. Oh, and the sharpshooter can suck a dick. I'm glad that guy is gone as well. Solid shit. Alright, next up are some bug fixes that are important. We have 3 of importance for the barbs here. First out, Whirlwind is now stacking with attack speed. This looks absolutely atrocious, but at least it's a buff. The Rumble glyph is capped at 30%, which is the reason Leapthorn's barb is dead now and forever. And Leap has been bugged forever, randomly not getting cooldown reduction. It's now slightly less annoying to play. For the Druids, the most important bug fix is to that of Dolmen's Stone, as this is a pretty substantial buff. For the Bone Spirit enjoyers, you should now be able to spam Bone Spirit on cooldown. Previously, you had to weave in another spell to reset the cooldown of it, but that should now be gone, making Bone Spirit even godlier. When it comes to the rogues, this is the victimized double dipping gone, and with it, the key passive in itself. Same goes for the sorcerers. In the general bug fixes, I found a pretty awesome change. The incenses were never supposed to get deleted when you die. Hallelujah. I spent billions dying with these assholes while pushing in Season 4 El Mayo. Okay, and then we end up in perhaps the most important part of it all, the unique changes. I'll have to spare you a lot of details here, as the changes are too massive and you need to touch grass or whatever. I may make a dedicated unique item video though, but that's up to you if it happens, my man or woman. So, the mythic aka the Uber uniques. Every single one of them got buffed, but the most substantial were to those of Starless Skies and Shaco in my opinion. Starless Skies got all of its stats basically doubled, and they ditched the shitty core damage for core ranks instead. This item is now officially God tier. When it comes to the Shaco, someone over at Blizz fucked up and it wasn't in the patch notes. It is now though, so I had to remake my video to show it. Thanks, Blizz. Either way, it's absolute bonkers getting doubled cooldown reduction. For every single multi-class unique, the changes was pretty minor. Buffs across the board basically, but nothing substantial. For Barb, Ramaladni got a pretty massive buff and will be used in more builds for sure. All the other uniques except for one though, still suffers from the same issues as they did previously and will most likely not be used. Here's something hilarious though. The Ramaladni buff that I wanted to show you is not in the patch notes anymore, but it went from a 0.4 multiplier to 0.5 and got a few other buffs. And the Ring of the Ravenous is also decent. Using brawling skills, you can now apply Rend once per second. This could have become absolutely god tier spamming Leap. Wanna guess why that don't though? Yeah, because of the gutted Rumble glyph. Sad times. Okay, but now we get to some actual interesting stuff. Like really fucking interesting. First off, the Crone is massively buffed, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is Dolmen's Stone. Not only was the passives buffed here, but check out the damage increase per boulder. This was buffed from 10% to 30. With 10 spinning balls around you, that's a 200 extra increased big hecking damn, my friend. Slap on the other buffs coming to boulder, and the build will be massive. Or well, maybe not massive, but at the lowest high A tier or low S tier. On top of that though, the build is simply just insanely fun to play. So enjoy Boulder in Season 5, my friends. That's what I'll be doing. Next is the Wild Heart Hunger. These got their damage doubled. So for being used in pretty much every shape-shifting build, they're now pretty much used in every shape-shifting build. And I'm not done yet. Scroll down and we find the Earthbreaker. Every passive on the ring is getting hard buffed, but we're also able to get chance to cast twice on the ring, which is just bonkers. It was previously impossible to gain 100% chance to cast twice. but that is now a possibility. Hell yeah, best build in the game incoming? Maybe. For the Cringelords, we have 3 interesting changes. First out is Deathless Visage. The stats on this thing is now godly. It's competing with Shaco and the new helm though, so I'm not sure if it will be used, unfortunately. What will most certainly be used though are the Blood Moon breaches. And why is that? Well shit, see for yourself. Every Bone Spirit build has been using these and was critting for billions. And now, the overpowered damage is more than doubled. That's just pure insanity is what that is. Bone Spirit is going to be so hecking good. Oh, and the change to Ring of Mendon is just fucking stupid. The damage from this thing doesn't scale with our minions, so I don't know why we're putting minion stats on it. Whatever, man. Alright, and then we have the Rogues. We have 3 interesting changes here as well. The first one being Sky Hunter. Pre-Season 4, this was used in every ranged build. This won't be used in every build, but it sure as hell is strong now, being able to get chance to hit twice along with a buttload of crit for the Precision Key passive. Having Stutter Step on it is fucking stupid though, and if it was Dexterity instead, for example, it would be way better. And if you're wondering what Stutter Step is, it's movement speed. Yep, that's right. Either way, Wind Force is going to be God tier for barrage builds. Previously, barrage was struggling in tier 100s, but with this along with the new uniques coming, barrage will be an actual build. Lovely. And finally, we'll scroll down to Scoundrel's Kiss. This unique was already godly, and I was expecting Rapid Fire to be one of the absolute best builds heading into Season 5. And hey, the ring got hard buffed on top of that, in nearly every way imaginable. Can definitely recommend this build if you want to play something broken and enjoy pissing on your enemies. Okay, let's finish off this video with the Sorcerer uniques. First off, we have Fractured Winterglass. The buffs to this thing are so fucking massive, I couldn't believe it at first. We are getting chance to cast twice, reduced cooldown on our conjurations, more Frozen Orb and additional Conjuration Mastery ranks. My man, this is just pure insanity, and Frozen Orb will be in high A tier or S tier for sure. And if you're wondering, this is Conjuration Mastery, and with a buttload of conjurations out, this passive will skyrocket out damage. It's my pick for Season 5. Scrolling down a bit, the Flameweaver gloves are getting a pretty substantial buff as well. Great for the Firebolt neckbeards that enjoy holding down one button. For the Meteor helmet though, this is pure shit. Yet more Meteor size, my man, we want chance to hit twice here, maybe in the expansion. But regardless, this one is massively buffed, and the build will be alright if you're interested in dropping meatballs. And for final unique today, we have Tal Rasha. Pretty much every sorcerer build is already using this, and it's getting a 20% increase. So that's just a flat buff for every sorcerer out there. Not like there are many left, it's a rare breed after all of the seasons of being shit, but I'm sure there are some left out there. Alright, I'm done now. If you're still here, then I don't really know what to say. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.